Jon Jones, a name once hailed as the genius chosen by God, now stands as a testament to a legend destroying himself. Inside the octagon, he was a prodigy, a young fighter who claimed the UFC championship belt at just 23, toppling legends like Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, and Rashad Evans, becoming an invincible icon. Nike, Gatorade, and Reebok rushed to sign him, turning him into the golden face of MMA. But beyond the spotlight, a parallel story unfolded. Late-night parties before fights, a Bentley crash fueled by alcohol, testing positive for cocaine right before a title bout, and multiple doping violations. These led to arrests, court appearances, and the loss of lucrative sponsorship deals. Each incident not only cracked his image, but also left the public wondering, is this the same Jon Jones, the genius in the cage, or a man slowly destroying himself? Ultimately, will history remember him as the greatest legend or the biggest tragedy in UFC? All will be revealed in the final part of the video. To understand why a legend veered onto a path of self-destruction, we must return to the beginning. Jon Jones was not born a warrior in a household with 3 brothers. He was the smallest, the weakest, always overshadowed by his larger siblings who later played in the NFL. That disadvantage became his driving force. Jones threw himself into wrestling, becoming a champion in high school. College was just a brief stop before he dropped out to pursue MMA. And then, after only 4 months of training, Jon debuted in the UFC. A phenomenon, a genius who stepped into the octagon as if destined for it. At 23, he became the youngest UFC champion in history. Million-dollar deals from Nike, Gatorade, and Reebok flooded in, turning him into the golden boy of the fight world. In the cage, Jones dismantled a roster of legends like Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, and Rashad Evans. This made him invincible, untouchable, and that's where the tragedy began to take shape. When a fighter, still so young, is called the greatest, victory stops being a challenge and becomes a habit. His ego swelled, rules became mere obstacles, and a sense of invincibility sowed the seeds for an inevitable downfall. After a string of unstoppable wins, Jon Jones entered 2012 bathed in dazzling glory. But that light was too bright to hide the shadows slowly emerging.
They found Jon Jones around 1 a.m. local time. According to police, he was clearly intoxicated, and they also found an open container in his car and also a handgun. This comes at a bad time to the UFC light heavyweight champion, as it seemed he was sort of cleaning up his career, and it seemed his career was back rolling.
In May 2012, Jones's newly purchased Bentley, a symbol of his success and wealth, veered out of control while he was intoxicated, crashing straight into a telephone pole. The police arrested him on the spot. In an instant, the image of the chosen one shattered. Fans no longer saw an exemplary champion, but a young man drowning in fame and alcohol. The crash was not just a traffic incident. It was a warning that Jon Jones was not invincible outside the octagon.
All these details are really not a good look for Jon Jones. If it all ends up being true, everything that's in the police report, I just really don't know how this is going to unfold for him. You're going to see all these ties back to his history and everything on that front. And I think that's really what's going to account to how he's potentially punished here is, everything he's done in the past.
In reality, this was only the tip of the iceberg. For a long time, Jones had been immersed in parties. Even in the week leading up to a fight, a period when other fighters adhere to strict discipline in sleep and diet, he indulged in alcohol, banned substances, and arrogance. To outsiders, this was evidence of unprofessionalism. But looking deeper, it reflected another truth. The immense pressure of living as an unbeatable genius drove Jones to seek unhealthy escapes. He couldn't lose in the octagon, so he chose to lose in life, in the shadows, where no cameras were watching. Public opinion at the time split in two. One side defended him. It was just a youthful mistake. The other was harsh.
This is his true self, an arrogant, reckless man hiding behind a Christian facade.
The aura of the Golden Boy cracked for the first time. If Jones once represented the future of the UFC, he now became a symbol of the dark side of fame too soon. That is the paradox of Jon Jones, invincible in the octagon, but in real life he was setting himself on a path of endless scandals. Just a year later, those cracks began to show clearly as Jones entered the fiercest fight of his career, the battle against Alexander Gustafsson. On September 24, 2013, at UFC 165 in Toronto, Jon Jones stepped into the octagon with the confidence of a young king. But just minutes later, the world witnessed something unprecedented. For the first time in his career, Alexander Gustafsson successfully took Jones down. Before that, Jones was renowned for his flawless takedown defense. No one had ever brought him to the mat. That single takedown was enough to shatter the illusion of untouchable that fans had long believed in. The fight lasted a grueling 25 minutes. Jones absorbed 134 significant strikes, while Gustafsson landed 137, a rare, evenly matched battle. The champion's face was swollen, his left eye nearly shut. It was only a brutal spinning back elbow in the 4th round that turned the tide, allowing him to retain his belt by unanimous decision. The public erupted. Many fans insisted Gustafsson deserved the win, claiming Jones's victory was a gift from the judges. The media dubbed it the fight of the year, even one of the greatest bouts in UFC history. But alongside the praise came a crack in his superhuman image. For the first time, people saw Jones stagger. longer, gasp for air, and appear vulnerable to collapse at any moment. That victory was not absolute glory. On the contrary, it shook the image of the invincible superhuman. The debate raged. Jones was still the champion, but was he still untouchable? The 2013 battle with Gustafsson left a lasting crack in Jon Jones's image. Though he retained his belt, his aura had faltered, and the public began scrutinizing his every move more closely. Instead of course-correcting, Jones leaned into a reckless lifestyle outside the octagon, convinced his natural talent would always bail him out of trouble. 2 years later, on January 3, 2015, Jon Jones entered one of the biggest fights of his career, UFC 182, Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier. His opponent was not just a challenger for the belt, but a lifelong rival. After 5 intense rounds, Jones emerged victorious, successfully defending his title. In the cage, he remained invincible, momentarily silencing the lingering doubts from the Gustafsson fight. But behind that dazzling light lay an undeniable shadow. Not long after, shocking news broke that stunned the community. Before facing Cormier, Jones had undergone a random drug test by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. The test results from December 4, 2014 revealed he was positive for benzoylecgonine, a metabolite of cocaine. It sounded serious, but the paradox was that, under the rules, cocaine was not banned outside of competition. This meant Jones was still allowed to fight, and UFC 182 proceeded as if nothing had happened. The UFC stayed silent, letting their brightest star step into the octagon under a flawless facade. When the truth came to light, the public erupted. On social media, from Twitter to MMA forums, Jon Jones's name became the center of millions of discussions. Many fans, already skeptical after the Gustafsson fight, now saw this as undeniable proof. The unbeatable genius was merely a facade masking a self-destructive lifestyle.
Yeah, sure, he did some bad things, but he fixed himself, and here he is, and he went on to do great things. He went on to beat tough challengers, and, you know, the past is in the past, and he turned himself around. But here we are again, where he's not going to be able to prove that for quite some time. And the more of these things that happen, or these alleged things happen, you know, it's going to make it harder and harder for him to recover his legacy. So he had a tough challenge ahead of him before. And now, if these things turn out to be true, he's got even a bigger challenge to try to save his legacy, in my opinion.
Sports media outlets flooded with coverage, even digging up past rumors about Jones's partying, drinking, and womanizing. The outrage wasn't directed solely at him, but also at the UFC. Why would a premier organization allow its star to compete despite testing positive for cocaine? Longtime die-hard fans began to split. Some were so disappointed they vowed to stop following Jones, calling him the wayward son of MMA. Others mocked his victory over Cormier, once seen as proof of greatness, now tainted by the drug scandal. In just a few days, the image of the chosen one crumbled into a laughingstock. Jon Jones went from being the UFC's pride to the punching bag of the entire martial arts community. To put out the fire after the cocaine scandal, Jon Jones announced he would voluntarily enter rehab. But just days later, he left the facility. This sparked public skepticism. Was his decision merely a publicity stunt to appease the masses rather than a genuine attempt to change? Just as trust was barely beginning to mend, Jones tore it apart again. On April 26, 2015, he caused a Bentley car accident in Albuquerque. The crash injured a pregnant woman. What outraged the public even more, Jones fled the scene, leaving the victim in a dangerous state. Police later found a pipe and suspected drug residue in his car. Albuquerque Police Department spokesman Simon Drobick stated that Jones faced charges for fleeing the scene and would be responsible for compensating damages to the involved vehicles and the woman's medical expenses. This was no longer a personal scandal, it was a public battle. The MMA community exploded with anger, from longtime fans to media outlets that once praised him, all turned their backs. Instead of being celebrated as the UFC's golden boy courted by Gatorade and Reebok, Jones faced harsher scrutiny. Many argued that the image he had built no longer aligned with his real-life actions, severely shaking fans' trust. The consequences were immediate. Nike and Reebok terminated his contracts, stripping him of major sponsorships. The UFC made an unprecedented move. They stripped him of his light heavyweight title and suspended him indefinitely. From the pinnacle of success, Jon Jones plummeted to rock bottom in mere months. After his dramatic fall in 2015, Jon Jones was forced to step away from the octagon. His championship belt was stripped, his public image fractured, and sponsorship deals vanished one by one. Yet, the UFC knew no one could match the allure of Bones. So when his suspension ended, the door for a comeback remained wide open. For Jones, this was his first chance to prove that past mistakes could be left behind. The UFC arranged a highly anticipated rematch with Daniel Cormier, now for the interim light heavyweight title. For many fans, this wasn't just a title fight, it was a test. Could Jon Jones rise, rebuild, and reclaim the trust he had lost? The answer came at UFC 214. Jones defeated Daniel Cormier with a classic head kick, sending the arena into a frenzy. In that moment, many believed Bones was truly back. A great fighter had fallen but rose stronger, a story that seemed almost too perfect. It didn't stop there. In an interview with Ariel Helwani, Jon Jones revealed he had no plans to retire and still wanted to fight, even mentioning the idea of fighting on the White House card, showing his competitive fire still burned brightly. This sparked heated debate in the MMA community. Some supported him, believing his extraordinary talent remained unbeatable. Others were skeptical, suspecting this was just a way to stay relevant after a string of scandals. The joy was short-lived. Just weeks after UFC 214, test results conducted by US Today turned everything upside down. In a urine sample collected post-fight, traces of turinabol, a banned anabolic steroid, were detected. This wasn't a random check, but part of the rigorous monitoring program every UFC fighter undergoes. The result nullified Jones's victory over Cormier, and the championship belt slipped from his grasp once again. When the doping violation was announced, the community's reaction erupted fiercely. For many fans, this was clear proof that Jon Jones hadn't truly changed. The earlier narrative of redemption or comeback now faced intense skepticism. On forums and social media, comments spread like wildfire. Some argued Jones was merely exploiting a redemption story to salvage his reputation while repeating the same mistakes. The patience of fans already worn thin by years of controversies reached its breaking point. The American media didn't hold back. ESPN called it the second blow to Jones' crumbling legacy, while Bleacher Report posed the question, can we still consider him a great champion when every victory comes with a question mark? The skepticism, which had simmered since the Gustafsson fight, now exploded, casting a shadow over every attempt at
former UFC champion Jon Bones Jones. Reinstated in October, preparing to fight Ovince St. Preux at UFC 197 this weekend in Vegas. So,
like the introduction.
It's been a while. Well, we have to tell your story.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear it from you. What has the last year been like?
You know, the last year has been, it's been a major learning situation for sure. You know, I've had the opportunity to kind of, you know, be vulnerable in front of the world. You know, step away from sports for a while, you know, work on myself as a person, as a parent. You know, it sounds weird to hear, but, you know, it's been a blessing in disguise. You know, I've really...
a comeback. The atmosphere made the UFC's efforts to craft a fresh start narrative for Jones more fragile than ever. Amid this crumbling public trust, Jon Jones and his team were forced to provide an explanation for the true cause of the positive test. Jones and his legal team quickly mounted a defense, asserting that he never intentionally used banned substances and suggesting possible contamination from dietary supplements. After months of investigation, experts confirmed this possibility had merit. In fact, anti-doping regulations were later adjusted to prevent fighters from being unfairly penalized for trace amounts of contaminants. On July 7, 2016, Jones held a press conference in Las Vegas, denying any cheating. His manager vowed to appeal the failed test result. Being labeled a cheat, Jones said through tears, hurts me more than anything I've ever experienced in my career. But for most fans, the legal or scientific details no longer mattered. They saw a familiar pattern. Jones caught doping again, stripped of his title again, and the image of a redemption comeback shattered once more. Under immense public pressure and after multiple suspensions and title losses due to doping, Jon Jones finally announced a temporary retirement, surprising the MMA community. He explained that he needed time to rebalance his life and mental health, and to explore future options beyond the octagon. For the first time, he acknowledged that even an exceptional fighter could be forced to pause under the weight of constant pressure and scandals. The response from the MMA community was immediate and widespread. Many fans expressed regret, saying that Jon Jones still had many opportunities to make his mark, while others sympathized and decided to temporarily withdraw, realizing that a period of rest was necessary to restore his image and spirit. Forums and social media were flooded with heated debates. Was this a permanent end or merely a pause for a stronger comeback? The news quickly reached UFC President Dana White, who confirmed Jones's official retirement from the UFC while emphasizing that no one can replace Jon Jones's legacy and impact on the sport's history. This statement honored Jones's contributions while leaving the door slightly open for a potential return if circumstances allowed.
Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
Thus, Jones's temporary retirement was not an absolute end. Instead, it created a moment of pause, allowing the community, media, and Jones himself to reflect on his entire journey from an unbeatable genius through scandals and controversies to a choice to step back and find balance in life. But behind the loud chorus of criticism, there's another perspective. Jon Jones is not a cold, unfeeling machine, nor an invincible figure devoid of emotion. He's human, burdened by the immense pressure of fame, the spotlight, and the expectations of millions. To many, his mistakes are proof of a fall from grace. But from another angle, they reflect the inner struggle of someone never allowed to show weakness. Instead of staying down forever, Jones chose to return to the octagon, to keep fighting, to keep contributing. And though each comeback is met with skepticism, one thing is undeniable: Jon Jones still delivers high-level fights, fights, moments that captivate audiences. A fighter who could have vanished after scandals, yet he remains as if determined to prove that failures outside the cage cannot erase his legacy inside it. Despite facing relentless criticism, Jon Jones didn't choose to disappear. He stepped back into the octagon as if confronting himself. His subsequent fights were not just battles for the championship belt, but carried a deeper meaning, a journey of redemption, a quest to prove that real-life failures couldn't extinguish his fire in the cage. Fans may debate Jones as a person, but most agree on one thing: his talent is undeniable. His creative strikes, adaptability in every fight, and resilience in the face of adversity have made him one of the rare fighters who command the world's attention. Perhaps it's this duality of light and shadow that makes Jon Jones so unique, both a controversial genius and a testament to the complexity of a person at the pinnacle. And perhaps that's why his story continues to be told, despite all the storms he's weathered. From a frail boy in his family, Jon Jones rose to become the youngest champion in UFC history. He entered the octagon like a phenomenon, invincible against the toughest opponents. Yet, alongside the glory, cracks in his personal life grew. Accidents, doping, ethical controversies, and countless moments of lost public trust. Despite it all, Jon Jones persists as a paradox. Fiercely criticized, yet celebrated as one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's proof that the pinnacle of athletic achievement is never separate from the darker corners of human life. With everything he's been through, from the heights of glory to the depths of scandal, will Jon Jones's legacy be remembered as that of an undefeated legend or a cautionary tale of self-destruction? What about you? How do you think Jon Jones deserves to be remembered?